The millionaire turns pale when his black son says Beggar will be his last birthday. Jack Sterling, Mr. Hampton's himself. Tan like leather, suit sharper than a knife. He was living the high life, the kind of life you only see on TV. His summer bash? Forget about it. Champagne rivers, diamonds flashing, power players everywhere. But Jack? He was hiding something. A son. Michael. Michael was from another world. Jeans, a faded t-shirt. Didn't fit in at all with Jack's fancy friends. See, Jack wasn't exactly broadcasting that he had a son. And a black one at that. Secret he kept buried deep. The party was roaring. Then, out of nowhere, Michael walks up to Jack. Jack tensed up. Money? A sob story? He was ready for anything but... Dad, Michael says, quiet, almost sad. That beggar I was talking to, he said your next birthday, it'll be your last. The color drained right out of Jack's face. The music, the chatter, it all just faded away. He stared at Michael, trying to read him. Was this some kind of twisted joke? Payback? But Michael, his face was a blank. Maybe even pity? Before Jack could say a word, Michael was gone. Poof. Back into the crowd. A beggar? What beggar, and how could he know something like that? The questions hammered in Jack's head. He started looking around, every face a threat. Was this a warning? A prank? He had to find Michael. Now. But when he turned to look, Michael had vanished. Gone without a trace. In a sea of millionaires, his son was just gone. What was going on? Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer o alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários de qual cidade você está assistindo. Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. But when he turned to look, Michael had vanished. Gone without a trace. In a sea of millionaires, his son was just gone. What was going on? Jack felt a cold sweat break out. He scanned the crowd, his heart hammering against his ribs. He really heard that right. A beggar? His death? It was insane. He shoved past a couple in tuxedos, ignoring their annoyed glares. Where was Michael? He needed answers. He spotted Tony DeMarco, one of his closest associates. Tony, have you seen a young guy around here? Jeans, t-shirt, looks a little lost. Tony frowned. Jack, buddy, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Nah, haven't seen anyone like that. Just the usual crowd, you know? Jack mumbled thanks and kept pushing through the throng. He had to find Michael. This felt wrong. Deep down, he knew Michael wouldn't joke about something like this. Then he saw her. Sarah, his ex-wife, Michael's mother. He hadn't seen her in... God, how long had it been? 10 years? Maybe more? She looked good. Too good. Like she hadn't aged a day. Sarah, he said, his voice hoarse. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. Jack, what are you doing here? I thought you wouldn't want me at your little party. It doesn't matter, Jack started. Did Michael contact you? Have you seen him recently? Michael? I haven't seen Michael since... Her voice trailed off, her face clouding with sadness. Since the accident. Jack froze. The accident? What accident? Michael was standing right there, wasn't he? What accident, Sarah? He gripped her arm, maybe a little too hard. Her eyes filled with tears. Jack, you remember. Michael, he died. 10 years ago. Car accident. He was only 18. The world swam. Jack stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. He stared at Sarah, her face a mask of sorrow. Then back at the glittering party, the oblivious faces, the champagne flutes. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. He saw Michael. He talked to him. But Sarah wouldn't lie about something like this. Then a memory flickered in his mind. The beggar. The one Michael had been talking to. The one who predicted his death. He remembered now. He saw him clearly. It was him. It was Michael. Older, weathered, but it was definitely Michael. A wave of nausea washed over him. If Michael was dead, then who was that? And how did he know about the beggar? And more importantly, how did he know he was going to die? Suddenly, the lights went out. The music stopped. The party plunged into darkness, broken only by the flickering of emergency lights. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. Then, a voice, amplified and distorted, boomed through the room. "Jack Sterling," the voice echoed, sending shivers down his spine. "Your time is up." "Jack Sterling," the voice echoed, sending shivers down his spine. "Your time is up." Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic. Jack spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice. Was it a prank? Some kind of sick joke? But the tone, it was too real, too menacing. He stumbled, knocking over a table laden with champagne glasses. They shattered on the rocks. Floor, adding to the chaos. People screamed. Security guards started pushing their way through the crowd, their faces grim. Then, the voice spoke again, closer this time. "You can't hide, Jack. Your sins have found you." He saw him then, standing on the grand staircase, bathed in the red glow of the emergency lights. Michael. But not the Michael he'd seen earlier. This Michael was different, older, harder. His eyes burned with a cold fury that made Jack's blood run cold. "Michael?" Jack whispered, his voice barely audible above the din. Michael didn't answer. He simply raised his hand, and the emergency lights flickered and died, plunging the room into complete darkness. The screams intensified. People were pushing, shoving, desperate to escape. Jack felt a hand grab his arm. It was Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Jack, we need to get out of here." He shook his head, his gaze fixed on the staircase. I need to know what's going on." Suddenly, a spotlight blazed to life, illuminating Michael on the staircase. He was holding something in his hand. A gun. The crowd gasped. "You abandoned me," Michael's voice boomed, clear and amplified. "You denied me. You tried to erase me from your life. Now you'll pay the price." Jack's mind raced. What was happening? How could this be real? Michael was dead. Sarah had told him so. But there he was, standing right in front of him, holding a gun. Then Michael spoke again. His voice filled with venom. "But death is too easy for you, Dad. I have another plan." He lowered the gun and pointed with the other hand to a shadowy figure that emerged in front of the stairs. "Meet my real dad, the one who raised me from the gutter after you left us, John O'Connell himself." The crowd gasped as the shadowy figure came to light, an old man with a grim stare on his face. But was Jack the only one who recognized? "That man!" O'Connell moved to Michael's side. Sarah gasped. "Jack, that's my dad, the one you paid to stay away from me, and Michael." She turned to Jack with an anguished face and whispered, "Oh my God, Michael is your brother. Oh my God, Michael is your brother." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, silencing the screams, even the enraged shouts of Michael. The spotlight seemed to waver, casting long, distorted shadows across the room. Jack felt like he'd been punched in the gut. His brother? Michael? He looked at Sarah, her face a twisted mask of grief and realization. Then at John O'Connell, the grim-faced man who was now his father-in-law? A wave of nausea crashed over him. "That's a lie!" Jack roared, but his voice lacked conviction. He could see the truth in Sarah's eyes, in the cruel satisfaction on O'Connell's face. Michael lowered the gun, but his eyes still burned with hatred. "It's all true, Jack. Or should I call you Dad? No, that feels wrong. You never were a dad to me." O'Connell stepped forward, his eyes locked on Jack. "I took care of your mess, Sterling. Sarah was young, scared. You paid me to disappear, to let you live your perfect life. But I never forgot, and I made damn sure Michael never forgot either." Suddenly the floor seemed to tilt. Jack grabbed at Sarah, but she flinched away, her eyes filled with disgust. You ruined everything," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You paid my own father to stay away from me and Michael." But then the lights went out completely. A deafening crash echoed through the darkness. When the emergency lights flickered back on, the scene was even more chaotic. People were scrambling over each other, desperate to escape. But something was different. Michael was gone, and John O'Connell lay sprawled on the floor, a bloody knife protruding from his chest. Sarah screamed, a high-pitched, keening wail that cut through the confusion. She rushed to O'Connell's side, cradling his head in her lap. "Dad! Dad, no!" Jack stood frozen, paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of it all. His son was his brother. His ex-lover's father was his... well, he didn't even know anymore. And now someone was dead. Then he saw it, lying near O'Connell's outstretched hand. A small, tarnished silver locket. He recognized it instantly. It was the one he'd given Sarah when they were kids. The one she always wore. He reached for it, his fingers trembling. As he picked it up, it fell open, revealing two tiny photos. One was of a young Sarah, beaming. The other was of him. But it wasn't just any picture of him. It was a picture he had thought lost forever. One taken years ago in the Hamptons. A picture with his mother, a beautiful woman who he had always been told had died when he was a baby. But there was something behind her he couldn't make out, except as he stared at the photo closer and closer. A ghostly figure became visible in the background, a shadow looming with death over both of them. The ghost of the beggar. A bone-chilling scream cut through the air as the room went black once again. This time, the emergency lights didn't turn back on. The world was black. Silence. Then a woman's sob. Sarah. He could feel her shaking. "Dad. Oh God, Dad." Jack blinked, tried to move. Pain shot through his head. He was lying on the floor. Someone had knocked him out. But who? Michael? He struggled to sit up, wincing. The emergency lights flickered back to life, casting long, dancing shadows. The room was a disaster. Tables overturned, glasses shattered, people huddled together, whispering in fear. Sarah was still cradling O'Connell, her face streaked with tears. "He's gone," she whispered, looking up at Jack, her eyes filled with a mixture of grief and accusation. "You did this. Somehow, you always do this." Jack shook his head, trying to clear the fog in. His brain. I don't know what happened." Then a hand clamped down on his shoulder. He looked up, two security guards, their faces grim. "Mr. Sterling," one of them said, his voice cold. "We're going to need you to come with us." "What? Why?" Jack protested. "I didn't do anything." Just come quietly, sir, the other guard said. We need to ask you some questions. They pulled him to his feet, and he stumbled, his head swimming. As they led him away, he caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye. A flash of silver. He turned his head, trying to focus. It was Michael, standing in the shadows, watching him. But he wasn't alone. Next to Michael stood a woman, tall, elegant, with a face that was both familiar and strangely unsettling. She wore a dress of shimmering black, and her eyes gleamed with an unholy light. Jack stared, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that face. He hadn't seen it in years, not since he was a little boy. "Mom?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. The woman smiled, a cold, cruel smile that sent shivers down his spine. "Hello, Jack," she said, her voice like ice. "Long time no see." But that wasn't his mother. His mother had died when he was a baby. He'd seen the photos, the funeral. He knew she was dead. But there she was, standing right in front of him, alive, and looking younger than ever. Then she spoke again, her voice dripping with malice. "You thought you could escape your destiny, Jack? You thought you could forget about the blood debt? You were wrong." Blood debt? What was she talking about? Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The beggar, Michael, O'Connell, Sarah. It was all connected. A twisted, horrifying puzzle that was finally coming together. His mother stepped forward, her eyes locking with his. "You see, Jack, you were never meant to have all of this. The money, the power, the perfect life. It was all built on a lie that's about to come crashing down." She raised her hand, and Michael stepped forward, a look of pure hatred on his face. "It's time to pay the price, Dad," he said, his voice cold and emotionless. Then she did the unbelievable. She grabbed Michael's arm. "No, darling, he is not your dad," she said. "John O'Connell told you so to get you to hate him. But the truth is, I'm your mom. I gave birth to you and left you to O'Connell because your father wanted me to." Michael was as shocked as Jack. He looked into the woman's face, trying to see if what she was saying was true. But who could believe what was true? Jack was a brother, not a father? His mother was alive and well? None of this made sense. "Who is my dad, then?" Michael asked. "He is here with us, Jack's little brother." "It's you, Sarah," the woman screamed. And as quickly as her words were spoken, chaos erupted in the room. "It's you, Sarah!" the woman screamed. And as quickly as her words were spoken, chaos erupted in the room. Sarah? A brother? Jack? Everything was a blur. He saw Michael's confused face, the security guards still holding him, the glittering wreckage of his life spread out like a broken mirror. Then Sarah lunged. Not at him, not the crazy woman claiming to be his mother, but at Michael. "You liar!" she shrieked, clawing at his face. "You ruined everything! You killed my father!" Michael, stunned, tried to push her away. "Sarah, what are you doing? She's lying!" But Sarah was beyond reason. She was a whirlwind of fury and grief, and she was focused entirely on Michael. They grappled, stumbling through the shattered glass, their fight a twisted dance of hate and betrayal. Suddenly, a gunshot. Everyone froze. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, sharp and final. Sarah crumpled to the floor. Michael stood over her, his face a mask of horror. In his hand, the gun, the one he'd threatened Jack with. "No," he whispered, his voice breaking. "No, no." The crazy woman, his mother, screamed, a high-pitched, piercing wail that seemed to crack the very air. She rushed to Michael, clutching him to her chest, rocking him back and forth. "It's all right, darling," she crooned, her voice a bizarre contrast to the carnage around them. "It's all right. It was her destiny." Jack couldn't breathe. He watched paralyzed as the security guards finally reacted, wrestling Michael to the ground. Sarah lay still, a dark stain spreading on the floor. Then another voice cut through the chaos. "Stop!" It was Tony DeMarco. He pushed his way through the crowd, his face pale but determined. He held up his hands, trying to regain control of the situation. "Everyone, calm down. We need to get medical attention for Sarah. And we need to get the police here, now." He looked at Jack, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Jack, what the hell is going on? What have you done?" But Jack didn't hear him. He was staring at Sarah, at the blood pooling around her. Then he saw it. A small, almost imperceptible movement. A flicker of her eyelids. She wasn't dead. Not yet. He pushed past the security guards, ignoring their protests. He knelt beside her, his hands trembling as he checked for a pulse. It was faint, but it was there. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Sarah, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at him, her gaze unfocused, her lips moving slightly. He leaned closer, straining to hear her words. "The truth," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "The truth is," she coughed, a gurgling, bloody cough. "You are not." Her eyes closed. Her hand went limp. And in that moment, just before the darkness swallowed her completely, Jack saw something in her eyes. Something that made his blood run cold. Something that made him realize that everything he thought he knew was a lie. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking through him, at someone behind him. And on her lips, just before she died, a single word. Twins. The word hung in the air. A poisonous seed taking root in the chaos. Twins? What twins? Sarah's eyes were empty, her life draining away onto the cold marble floor. Jack's mind raced, trying to make sense of the senseless. Then he saw her, the mother. She wasn't cradling Michael anymore. She was standing perfectly still, a chilling smile playing on her lips. Her eyes, those ice-cold eyes, were locked on Jack, and behind her, in the shadows, another figure emerged. A woman, tall, elegant, wearing a dress of shimmering black, identical to the first. Twins. Jack stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. Two of them. How? His head swam. He didn't understand. The first woman spoke, her voice amplified, echoing through the room. "Surprise, Jack. Did you really think you could escape your destiny? We've been watching you, waiting." The second woman stepped forward, her voice a chilling echo of the first. "You see, Jack, you were never supposed to have any of this. The life you stole, the family you abandoned." Michael looked from one woman to the other, his face a mask of confusion and fear. "Mom? What's going on? Who is she?" The first woman, let's call her the lead twin, stroked Michael's hair. "She's your aunt, darling. My twin sister. We've been working together for years, planning your revenge." "Revenge?" Michael whispered, his voice barely audible. "But why?" The lead twin smiled, a cruel, twisted smile. "Because, Michael, your father took everything from us. He destroyed our family. He left us with nothing." She gestured towards Jack. "He's not your father, Michael. Not really. Your father was a good man, a kind man, a man Jack murdered to take his place. ... A gasp went through the crowd. "Murder? Jack? It was insane!" The second twin stepped forward, her eyes burning with hatred. Jack Sterling, you may think you've escaped your past. You may think you've buried your secrets. But we know the truth. We know what you did. And now you're going to pay. You're crazy, Jack shouted, his voice cracking. This is insane. I didn't kill anyone. The lead twin laughed, a chilling, mocking laugh. Denial, Jack? That's always been your problem. You deny the truth, even when it's staring you right in the face. She clapped her hands, and the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. This time, there were no emergency lights, just darkness. Thick, suffocating darkness. Then a single spotlight blazed to life, illuminating Tony DeMarco. He stood there, his face pale, holding a microphone. But his eyes were different. Cold, hard, calculating. "Hello, Jack," he said, his voice amplified, echoing through the darkness. "Long time no see." Jack stared at him, his mind reeling. Tony? What was he doing? Then Tony smiled. A slow, cruel smile. "You see, Jack," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "You were right about one thing. Your sins have found you." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But you were wrong about who was going to make you pay." And then Tony DeMarco spoke the words that shattered Jack Sterling's world. "My name isn't Tony DeMarco," he said, his voice ringing with triumph. "My name is Jack." Sterling. A wave of nausea washed over Jack. He stared at Tony, at his face, at his eyes, and he saw it. The resemblance, the same sharp jawline, the same piercing blue eyes. It couldn't be. It just couldn't. But it was. Tony DeMarco was his twin brother. "My name is Jack Sterling." The world tilted. Jack clutched his head, a scream building in his throat. His twin? Tony? The guy he'd trusted? The one who always had his back? Was his brother? And he was trying to destroy him. The lead twin, or whatever she was, cackled. "Oh, the look on your face. Priceless. Years we spent planning this, Jack. Years." Michael was a mess, tears streaming down his face. "Tony? This can't be. You were my friend." Tony, no Jack, just smirked. "Friendship is a weakness, Michael. And Dad here taught me never to be weak." He spat on the floor. "He stole our life, Michael. Our mom. Everything." Suddenly, everything clicked. The stories his mom used to tell him, the way she'd always looked at him with this strange mixture of love and resentment, the missing pieces of his past, they all slammed into place. But there was something else, something even more horrifying, a memory buried deep, clawing its way to the surface. He saw himself as a little boy, standing by his mother's deathbed. She was weak, barely conscious, and she was whispering something, something he couldn't quite make out. "It's him. It's always been him." He'd thought she was talking about his father, but now he knew better. His gaze snapped to the lead twin, and then to the second twin, and then back to Tony. They were all watching him, their eyes gleaming with triumph. And he knew the truth. The real, terrifying truth that had been hidden from him his entire life. He wasn't Jack Sterling. He was the other twin. The evil twin. The one his mother had tried to kill. "No," he whispered, his voice trembling. "That's not true. It can't be." But it was. He could feel it in his bones. The darkness that had always lurked beneath the surface. The anger, the rage. It wasn't just part of him. It was him. He looked at Sarah, lying motionless on the floor. He looked at Michael, his face twisted with confusion and grief. He looked at Tony, his eyes filled with hatred, and he knew what he had to do. He lunged, not at Tony, not at the twins, but at Michael. He grabbed the gun from Michael's limp hand. The metal was cold against his skin. "I'm sorry, Michael," he whispered, his voice cracking. "But this has to end." He raised the gun, pointed it at his own head. Then, a voice. "Don't." It was Sarah. She was alive. Barely, but alive. Her hand reached out, grabbing his leg. "Don't do it, Jack," she whispered, her voice weak but firm. "There's another way." He hesitated. He looked at her face, her eyes filled with not hatred, but pity. And something else. Something he couldn't quite name. He lowered the gun. "What other way?" he asked, his voice barely audible. And then Sarah said the words that changed everything. "The other brother," she whispered. "He knows." "The other brother? What other brother?" And then the world went black. "The other brother. He knows." Sarah's words hung in the air. A last breath. A dying riddle. Jack stared at her, his mind a whirlwind of impossible scenarios. What other brother? He knew Tony. He knew, or thought he knew, his own messed up history. But another brother? It was too much. Then the lights flickered back on. The scene was a tableau of horror. Sarah's lifeless body, Michael sobbing uncontrollably, the twins standing like statues, Taney, his brother, staring at him with cold, calculating eyes. Someone screamed. He didn't know who, but amidst the chaos, a new figure emerged. He'd been there all along, lurking in the shadows, unnoticed, unimportant. The family lawyer, Mr. Abernathy, a quiet, unassuming man who always seemed to fade into the background. Abernathy cleared his throat, his voice surprisingly strong. "Enough," he boomed, silencing the room. This is madness. It's time the truth came out." He walked towards Jack, his eyes filled with a strange mix of pity and determination. "Jack," he said, his voice low, "your mother. She entrusted me with a secret that could change everything." Jack stared at him, his heart pounding in his chest. What now? Abernathy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. He handed it to Jack. Jack looked at the photo. It was a picture of his mother, young and beautiful, standing next to a man he didn't recognize. "Who is that?" Jack asked, his voice trembling. Abernathy sighed. "That, Jack, is your real father. Not the man you grew up with. Not the man those women claim murdered him. Your real father was a priest." "A priest?" The room spun. His mother a priest? It was impossible. "It's true, Jack," Abernathy continued, his voice gentle. "Your mother, she had an affair with a priest. You are the product of that affair." He paused, taking a deep breath. "And there was another child. A child born shortly after you. A child that your mother gave up for adoption." Jack stared at him, his mind reeling. "Another child? A brother? Where is he?" Jack asked, his voice barely audible. "Where is my brother?" Abernathy looked at him, his eyes filled with a sadness that made Jack's blood run cold. "He's here, Jack," Abernathy said, his voice barely a whisper. "He's been here all along." He turned, and his gaze fell upon Tony. "Tony?" Jack whispered, his voice cracking. Abernathy shook his head. "Not Tony, Jack. The other Tony." He pointed towards the door, and there, standing in the doorway, was another man, identical to Tony, identical to Jack, another twin. But this twin was wearing a priest's collar. The world exploded. Jack felt his knees buckle. It couldn't be true. It just couldn't. But it was. He could see it in their faces. The shock, the confusion, the dawning realization. My name, the priest said, his voice calm, almost serene, is Father Michael Sterling, and I know everything. Father Michael Sterling, padre, irmão de Jack e de Tony, era demais para processar. O caos virou silêncio de morte. Todo mundo olhava pro padre, esperando o quê? Um milagre? Uma confissão? Father Michael respirou fundo. Eu sei a verdade. Ele disse a voz calma, cortando o ar. Eu sei o que aconteceu naquela noite, anos atrás. Quem realmente matou o pai de vocês? Ele olhou direto para Jack. Não foi você, Jack. Nunca foi. Uma onda de alívio invadiu Jack. Mas durou pouco, porque o padre se virou para as gêmeas. Foram vocês, ele acusou. Vocês planejaram tudo. A morte do pai, a separação dos irmãos, a vingança. Tudo para proteger o segredo sujo. As gêmeas arregalaram os olhos. Medo? No rosto delas? Mentiras! Gritou uma. Ele está mentindo! Mas o padre não se abalou. O segredo, ele continuou, é que o pai de vocês, ele abusava de vocês. E vocês se vingaram. Juntas. O silêncio voltou, mais pesado que antes. Michael chorava baixinho. Tony estava pálido, a boca entreaberta. Jack não sentia nada, só um vazio. Enorme. Father Michael se aproximou de Jack. Você sempre foi a vítima, Jack. Usado, manipulado. Mas agora você pode escolher vingança ou perdão. Jack olhou para o padre, para o rosto dele, tão parecido com o seu. Tão diferente também. Um rosto de paz. Ele respirou fundo, sentindo o peso de toda a sua vida nas costas. A raiva, a dor, a culpa. Era hora de deixar ir. Perdão, ele sussurrou. Eu escolho perdão. Mas, de repente, a luz acabou de novo. Gritos, confusão. E um tiro. Quando a luz voltou, Father Michael estava no chão. Sangue. As gêmeas tinham sumido. E Tony segurava uma arma. Olhava para Jack com um sorriso triste. Desculpa, irmão, ele disse. Não podia deixar ele ter paz. E apontou a arma para a própria cabeça. Não. Escuridão. Você precisa se inscrever agora no canal. Não perca as próximas histórias. Elas serão ainda mais insanas. Esmague o botão de like agora. É o seu dever como fã. O algoritmo precisa sentir o seu apoio. Inunde a seção de comentários com suas teorias. O que vai acontecer agora? Quem atirou no padre? Tony se matou mesmo? Queremos saber o que você pensa. Não espere nem mais um segundo. Compartilhe este vídeo com 5 amigos. Eles precisam conhecer esse final. Mostre a eles o poder de uma boa história. E a verdade? Bom, ela ainda está lá fora, esperando para ser revelada. Será que Jack vai encontrá-la? Só o tempo dirá. Ou, quem sabe, a próxima história.